going on, YouTube fam? It's your boy Tony 2Times, and we back with another episode of the Baltimore Way, man. Y'all know what I need y'all to do before I start. Be sure to hit that like button. Definitely watch the video to the end. Let's get right into it. In certain environments with a vicious cycle of addiction, it seems like crime goes hand in hand. I have seen it firsthand. Dreams get shattered and all hope is lost in the process, turning the individual cold. In certain situations, you want to feel bad for a person, not wishing prison on no one, but in other incidents, the act is so bold and cold, it seems like the person doing it has no heart. And on this episode of the Baltimore Way, we will be discussing Joseph Oglesby and John Knox and a plot for a fast lick that went horribly wrong. According to sources, Ralph Timmons was involved in a relationship with Joseph's ex-wife, which was cool with Joseph, it seemed like. But one day while downtown at the mosque, that all seemed to change when Joseph met at the time 21-year-old John Knox, a young man that had just lost his mother and was fighting addiction. Both men in need for fast money, Joseph came up with a plan to break into the home of Ralph Timmons. To John, the blueprint seemed easy enough. Wait till no one was home, hit the house, take items, and go. But it wouldn't exactly go that way. Allegedly, Joseph and Ralph had known each other since hoppers, but John thought nothing of it. Then on the night of the lick, the two men cased the home, waiting for all cars to leave. Once the car left and the men saw only one light on in the kitchen, the plan went into motion. John broke into the house and proceeded to let Joseph in, but little did either man know the home wasn't empty. Ralph's son was upstairs watching TV, and allegedly Ralph didn't go far just to pick up a pizza. As the two men were going through the house searching for things of value, Ralph would come home, catching John in mid-act. With a blade in one hand and phone in the other, Ralph saw John closing the kitchen drawer and confronting him, stating, "You know you messed up." Ralph's son, 11 years old at the time, heard the commotion and ran downstairs to see his father, motioning for him to grab the phone and call police. But all of a sudden, a man dressed in black with a mask on came out the basement and opened fire on Ralph in front of his son. Allegedly, even before taking his last breath, Ralph stated, "Don't do nothing to my son," as the young man froze after seeing his father. The shooter, who was allegedly Joseph, then turned the blicky on him as shots were fired in the young man's direction. He was hit once, but able to escape to his room, down to the balcony, and run to flag down the police. Officers reported a young man running to them, telling them about the incident that happened on the 1900 block of North Bentlow Street. As BPD approached the home, they saw the victim, the young father, Ralph, unfortunately gone, laying on the floor. As crazy as it seems, for some reason, Joseph and John were still in the home. When one man hiding in a fold-out bed and the other behind some crates, they were both arrested, and the .45 blicky was found in the basement freezer. As the case went on and the trial started, Ralph's son, just 13 at the time, replayed that night. But the key witness would be John Knox. As he stated, he didn't even know Joseph had a blicky on him at the time, or anyone would be home. He just wanted to get high. Allegedly, before the incident, John was a few weeks off from leaving Baltimore, going to Florida to college. But when his mother passed away, he alleged he began getting high. John also stated he tried to keep the G code and really didn't care what happened to Ralph, but stated when Joseph turned the blicky on his son, it all changed. And sitting in prison, he realized it was a cruddy thing to do. Joseph's lawyers fought back, stating Joseph and Ralph was cool, and Joseph was actually with Ralph at the pizza shop, and the crime was all John's work, even painting Ralph as the half-brother of Tavon White, one of the leaders of J, or BGF, and speaking on the indictment they just had at the Baltimore jail at the time. But it didn't work. Joseph was found guilty of the hit, attempt, and burglary, and sentenced to life in prison. John Knox will receive life with all but 45 years suspended. More of this story, pay attention to the ones that know where you lay your head and how you move. Because when it's all said and done, that could be the person that come get you. But hey, That's the Baltimore way. Man, this a crazy story, you feel me? You know what I mean? Rest in peace to Ralph, you feel me? I couldn't imagine, you know, you leave to go get your kids something to eat, you come back, people in your home, then, you know, things get crazy, you know, your son come downstairs and the last thing you see before you lose your life is them turning the blicky on your son. That's a messed up situation, but Shorty was strong. You know, he was 11 years old at the time. He got hit once, but he was able to escape through his room, you feel me, to get out the house and run and track down the police. You know what I mean? That's a traumatizing experience though, because at the end of the day, he had to relive that 2 years later. He had to get on the stand at 13 years old, and he watched his father take his last breath in front of him by somebody he knew too though. You see what I'm saying? Because they said Joseph and Ralph, they was cool, you know, they knew each other, they was childhood friends, you feel me? And then they tried to paint a picture of Ralph like, oh, he was BGF, his brother was Tavon, you know what I mean? Y'all know about Tavon White. I ain't gotta go back, I did a video on that, but it ain't work, man. They still got convicted, but y'all already know that's how it go, man. It be the people close to you. It was kind of a crazy situation, because they said, you know, Joseph's ex-wife was actually dealing with Ralph. So I don't know, man. But yeah, rest in peace. Y'all already know this is another episode of the Baltimore Way. If you made it to the end, I appreciate you. Be sure to like, comment, share. This your boy Tony 2 times. Love y'all, fam. I'm out.
Before we get into this story, just a quick disclaimer. Please know that everyone involved in this case has already been tried and convicted and sentenced. This story is not to glorify anything, and it's a tragic story. And, you know, rest in peace and prayers to everyone who was involved. All right, now let's get right into it. 26-year-old Ramon and 28-year-old Brandon Wilder were half-brothers from Baltimore who shared a father. Their father, a Baltimore tire shop owner, insisted that he did everything he could to give his boys an opportunity to succeed outside of the streets. He gave them jobs at his shop and did his best to be present in their life, although they lived in different households. Brandon lived with his mother majority of the time, but saw his father and brother often. Ramon talked to his dad every morning just to say hello, while Brandon and his dad would mainly speak when they saw each other. Either way, in the beginning, the brothers were on good terms, it seemed like. Some would say that Ramon was the more successful of the brothers. Even though he was in the streets, he held a steady job, while Brandon had a reputation of getting high on his own supply and not being reliable or dependable. In the years leading up, they had a falling out. Some speculated that Brandon and Ramon were in competition for drug sales, and Ramon pursued women who were or had formerly been Brandon's intimate partners. So the brothers were no longer on speaking terms. Brandon had a friend named Grice, 36, and they were very close. Some would say their relationship was described as being like that of a father and son. Grice would provide anything Brandon needed and vice versa. The two were described as seeming to be together all day, every day. According to court documents, in the days before the heinous act that was committed against Ramon, Brandon complained that his brother had taken money from him and was a bad brother. Brandon said that he was going to rob him and beat him up for taking his sales. Allegedly, his friend Grice encouraged him and agreed that Ramon had been a bad brother, allegedly stating that if Ramon was his brother, he would do the same. However, Grice insisted that he had nothing to do with the motive, but rather got caught up helping a friend because he was probably too afraid to say no at the time. LaBria Page, 28 years old, had known Brandon since middle school and been involved in an intimate relationship with him off and on over the years. LaBria was an inspiring nurse and a graduate of Woodlawn High School. LaBria was said to be very caring, a sweet girl who loved to help others in need, and would have been a great nurse. In May 2014, her and Brandon got into a serious relationship, and she gave birth to his child. LaBria had first met Brandon's half-brother Ramon back in 2007. On Thursday, May 8th, 2014, Ramon surprised a girl he was romantically involved with a trip to Atlantic City for her birthday. This young woman happened to be one of Brandon's exes. They had originally planned to stay the night, but plans changed and Ramon and his companion returned to Baltimore, arriving home around 2 a.m. on the morning of May 9th, 2014. Ramon told the young woman that the limousine driver would drop him off where he had parked his rental vehicle, a pickup truck, so that he could go to his night job. At some point during the day, on May 8th, 2014, Brandon allegedly called Ramon from his girlfriend LaBria's phone while Ramon was away on his trip and put the phone to her ear. According to LaBria, Brandon wanted her to find out where Ramon was. She explained that throughout the day, Brandon, pretending to be her, sent X-rated texts to Ramon from her phone. LaBria asserted that Brandon wanted her to trick Ramon into thinking that she wanted to do it with him, to lure him into meeting her. Brandon allegedly said that he was going to rob his brother and that he was upset with Ramon for what he felt was disrespect. Now, Grice, who was Brandon's close friend at the time, allegedly egged his friend on by emphasizing the amount of disrespect his brother had been showing him. After midnight on Friday, May 9th, 2014, Brandon dropped off Grice and his girlfriend by Grice's car before LaBria and him drove to a parking lot a few blocks away, near St. Agnes Hospital, where they anticipated the rendezvous with Ramon. Brandon instructed his girlfriend and the mother of his child that when Ramon arrived, she was to lure him to her vehicle. Brandon then exited the van and walked into a nearby alley. Shortly after Brandon left, Ramon pulled up in a truck. LaBria signaled to him by flashing her headlights, and she could hear Ramon singing as he approached. Then, according to court documents, she heard shots fired and saw Ramon running away. She tried to drive away. She was stopped by Brandon, who was holding the blicky. LaBria later realized that one of the rounds had hit her car near where her son was. At this point, I'm sure LaBria was terrified and remained complicit because she didn't want to possibly lose her life or further endanger her son. Brandon jumped in his brother's rental truck and told LaBria to follow him. LaBria allegedly tried to call Ramon's phone, but Brandon answered. Now, Grice, who was parked nearby with his girlfriend, panicked when his phone rang and said that he hoped he, meaning Brandon, wasn't calling him on his, meaning Ramon's phone. From there, Grice dropped off his car and then they drove Ramon's truck to a nearby hotel next to the airport. Later, Grice, Brandon, and Grice's girlfriend met up with LaBria at an extended stay hotel where she was waiting in her van. From there, the two men drove the van while Grice and Brandon drove Ramon's truck to another hotel. They abandoned the vehicle, but not before taking some of Ramon's belongings from the truck and placing it in the van. According to court documents, once they arrived at the hotel room, Brandon allegedly told LaBria that he had shot Ramon because Ramon was too happy to have wanted to do it with her in front of their son. Overwhelmed, LaBria told Grice's girlfriend that she had lured Ramon to meet up with her by texting and calling him. The Baltimore City Police Department was hot on their trail after Ramon's body was found almost 2 hours later. LaBria later tried to file an insurance claim for the damage done to her car, but all that did was alert police because they found suspicious items related to the investigation in her car. According to court documents, Grice's girlfriend testified that when the police first interrogated her on May 8, 2014, she denied having any knowledge of Ramon's passing. Instead, she said that she was at a shop. After she was released from the interview, she told Grice that she had not said anything to the police, and he allegedly rewarded her with an expensive gift. In later interviews, however, the two women each changed their stories in regards to the slaying of Brandon's half-brother and who was responsible. Both women pleaded guilty, LaBria to murder and received 20 years, Grice's girlfriend to being an accessory after the fact and was sentenced to 2 years. The two agreed to tell their side in court for commuted sentences. As for Grice, Brandon's friend, the prosecution's theory was that he was the ringleader of the attack on Ramon. To debunk that alleged theory, Grice said that he planned to take the stand in his own defense and to testify about the nature of his relationship with Brandon, about how the relationship had fallen apart, about threats that Brandon had made against him in open court, and about a violent attack that he had suffered in jail, allegedly at his former friend's command. Grice proposed that he would present testimony about Brandon's motives to order the attack and other alleged crimes committed by Brandon. The court, however, found none of these evidences relevant. Grice ultimately did not take the stand at his trial. He was convicted of conspiracy to commit robbery and carjacking, but acquitted of all other charges, including the most serious, and was sentenced to 25 years. The jury found Brandon Wilder guilty of premeditated felony and second-degree murder, along with related robbery, carjacking, conspiracy, and weapon offenses. He was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole for the most serious charge, plus a consecutive 20 years for the attempted armed robbery, another consecutive 10 years for using a firearm, a concurrent 20 years for armed carjacking, and a concurrent 5 years for conspiracy to commit armed robbery. The other convictions were merged for sentencing purposes. Wow, guys, what a crazy story. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this tragic story about these two brothers. Ramon was talked about as a very nice guy with a caring personality and a hard worker. The brother's father doesn't agree with the narrative that his sons took the other son's life because of jealousy, but rather one was down on his luck and saw an opportunity for a quick come up. LaBria's story was also featured on For My Man on TV1. She was a promising young woman with a bright future ahead of her, where she had her own mobile food service business. Unfortunately, she made some bad choices that she regrets, and she's deeply remorseful for her role in this tragic event. Grice was also remorseful for his role in the scheme. Despite nice words and remorse, it can't undo what was done. There's so many factors to this story. It was hard to put it all in one video. Hopefully this story can shed light about how important it is to watch the people around you and pay attention to how they move and how they treat you. Are they for you or are they against you? Because hey, that's the Baltimore way. Thank you all for watching. If you made it this far, please hit that like button. Give us a thumbs up. It helps get the channel recognized. Feel free to share this video, comment down below, and share your thoughts on this story. Let us know who you want to see next. Hit that subscribe button. Tap that notification bell to stay up to date with new uploads. Thank you guys for watching once again. This is your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 times, and I'm out.
Going on YouTube, fam. It's your boy Tony 2 times, and we back with another episode of the Baltimore Way, man. Before I start, be sure to smash that like button. Definitely watch the video to the end to hear the full story. Let's get right into it. A hitter. What turns a person to a shooter? Is it circumstances or environment? Is it something that can be taught or learned? Or is it already in an individual? Either way, we all know people that some see and go the other way. Or they are known for being zero tolerance in their community. But can having a reputation lead to a person name being brought up and things they have no involvement in or being falsely accused? And on this episode of the Baltimore Way, we will be talking about Marquel Gaffney. According to sources, Marquel will pop up on Baltimore police radar as a hopper around about 2007. A man named Albert Smith, who was 56 years old, was hit and unfortunately lost his life. At the time, Marquel, who was just 15 years old, name came up as the shooter. But even though he was convicted, it stayed in juvenile courts, and the charge would be dropped to second-degree hit, in which Marquel would allegedly do a little bit of time, but return back uptown. Then about 5 years later, in 2012, Marquel would allegedly pop back up on police radar with a narcotics charge, in which he would get a suspended sentence and serve a few months. Fast forward, according to sources, one night about 1 a.m., shots were fired on the 900 block of North Monroe Street. Two officers in the area showed up and allegedly caught the shooter red-handed letting off shots, in which one officer alleged he recognized the suspect as Marquel. As police gave chase, the man was able to get away and out the jam. As BPD returned back to the crime scene, they found one man hit in the chest, arms, and legs, and found the second victim in the 1800 block of Moser Street. The shell casings found on both scenes allegedly was tested, and ballistics assumed the shots came from the same gun. One of the victims would unfortunately pass away, and the other would survive. The surviving victim was visited by homicide detectives at the hospital, but didn't have too much to say or give up any information. But an officer named Morales claimed to know for a fact that Marquel was the shooter. Going off the fact he stated they made eye contact before the man fled the scene, also stated he had patrolled the area for years and knows everyone and had a book with photos and addresses of most people in the neighborhood. About 3 hours after the hit, 4 men were spotted at a BP gas station on the corner of Monroe and Lafayette Avenue. Police questioned all men and arrested Marquel, who was in the group. He was charged with the double shooting, and it made headlines as a 21-year-old man having 2 hits in 5 years. But as the case made the court, it seemed like most of the case was just circumstantial evidence. The surviving victim even took the stand, stating he grew up with Marquel and he wasn't the shooter, saying it was another man who approached the two and let off shots. But on stand, the survivor said he only knew the shooter from the neighborhood, but not by name. Another witness who said he was right there when the other victim lost his life, he also stated before taking his last breath, the man told him he saw the shooter but didn't know exactly who it was. Even phone calls from that night that Marquel had made at the time of the hits allegedly showed he was home when his girlfriend stated she spoke to him on FaceTime and he was in his room the entire time. Other friends of Marquel also stated they spoke to him around about the time the shooting took place. Either way, officers tried to place Marquel as the hitter, especially since the hit happened in the same area that the previous hit of the man in 2007 was done at, and Marquel was charged. Throughout all the court proceedings, Marquel would be found guilty of the hit and attempt and sentenced to life plus 85 years. Even though the victim tried to keep the G code and Marquel's friends said he was home all night, it seemed like officers and prosecutors wanted him. Maybe for the previous hit as a team. Moral of this story, in the streets, everyone wants a name, but depending on what the name is made of, you have to deal with it. It could be a name from getting money, being cruddy, or being a hitter, in which they all come with consequences. So do you really want to make a name for yourself to be a hot boy? But hey, that's the Baltimore way. Man, crazy story, you feel me? Definitely let me know what y'all think about this one. And the person who sent it to me, you know what I mean, when I was reading it, and I was reading what they had to say about it, they were saying, a lot of people were saying he was innocent. And I don't know, you know what I mean? It's a he say, she say kind of thing. So I don't know if that's the case or not. But at the end of the day, the victim, whoever survived, they probably was just trying to keep the G code. They probably was trying to leave it in the streets and let the streets deal with it. That's how some people handle it. Even if he felt like Marquel was the hitter, he like, no, I want him to come home so I could deal with it. So at the end of the day, he had a lot of people trying to get him out that jam. But I feel like they already wanted him. They already had their mindset on him as the suspect. And sometimes, you feel me, it is a lot of people in prison right now to this day that might not be guilty because a police ain't like them or somebody in the community just want to get them out of there. And I don't know if that's the case with this. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments, you feel me? I'm gonna leave this one up to y'all. But y'all already know that's how it be, man. He might be able to come home on a pill, you feel me? Rest in peace to the victims, both people who lost their life, you know what I mean? Real messed up at the end of the day. Because it really just sounds like some petty beef, like some words was exchanged, and then shots go off. But that's how it go, man. But y'all already know, man, be sure to smash that like button. I appreciate you if you made it to the end. This your boy Tony 2 Times. I love y'all, fam. I'm out.
Hey 2 Times fam, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Baltimore Way. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I invite you to join the 2 Times family. Tap that subscribe button, hit the notification bell to get notified of all uploads. Be sure to like this video if you're rocking with the content. Comment down below and share your thoughts. Of course, always keeping it respectful. Feel free to share this video. Make sure you watch until the end to hear the full story. In this episode, we will be talking about a former Baltimore County police officer who led law enforcement on a 4-day crime spree with his 2 young daughters that ended in tragedy. Let's get right into it. Robert Vicasa was hired by the Baltimore County Police Department on December 11, 2002, under the name Robert Brown. He changed his name to Vicasa sometime after 2008, presumably in 2015, according to internal affair records obtained by the Baltimore Sun. During his career as an officer, he had his fair share of infractions, which ultimately led to his demotion and firing. His first 2 incidents were failures to appear in district court in 2007 and 2008. About 10 years went by without any issues, and Robert was promoted up to sergeant in Precinct 1 in Catonsville. It was sometime during those 10 years, Robert became a husband and a father of 2 girls. Things seemed to be getting better for Robert at work. However, between June 2018 and July 2019, Robert was accused of engaging in an ongoing course of improper conduct with 3 female subordinates, according to his official record. Robert requested a hearing by a trial board, which found him guilty of 5 of the 6 allegations made against him. He was demoted back down to officer. Robert's law enforcement career was again in jeopardy in March 2021 when allegations were made against Robert that he had been sleeping on the job, refused orders to be trained or perform duties, and displayed conduct unbecoming of an officer. He again requested a hearing by the trial board. 4 days after the board convened to hear the allegation, Robert was reported again for subordination and again requested a hearing. Before the second board could convene, the first board reviewing the March 2021 incident had already made the decision to terminate Robert in August 2021. According to a later news interview, Robert's mother said the allegations at his job and the impending termination had caused her son to snap, who she claims has a mental illness. Along with trouble in his career, Robert was also facing issues in his home life. At some point, Robert and his wife and the mother of his children had split. They were sharing custody of their 2 daughters. While Robert worked in Baltimore County, his residence was in York, Pennsylvania, where his estranged wife and 2 daughters, 7 and 6 years old, lived. According to news reports, his estranged wife and him had broken up because he was allegedly abusive. At some point during the last 10 years of his career with the police department, he met co-worker and close friend Tia Bynum. Tia had joined the force a few years after Robert. She worked in the department's Criminal Investigations Bureau, a specialized unit that investigates the most serious crimes. Officials described the two as being in a relationship. Regardless of Robert's run-ins at work, Tia seemed to have stuck by his side. On Friday, November 12, 2021, things took a turn for the worse after Robert invited his estranged wife over to his place to celebrate her birthday with their children. According to court documents, the children's mother went to Robert's home in Windsor Township in York at around 9 p.m. to have cake. After the family was finished eating cake and the girls allegedly went upstairs to bed, Robert allegedly asked his children's mother to stay as she was getting ready to leave, telling her he had a birthday gift for her. Robert then appeared to be looking for the gift, and the next thing the woman knew, he and Tia had grabbed her by the arms, police said. Court documents state that he allegedly put a gat to her head. She said she screamed as he and Tia dragged her to the basement and tied her wrists with zip ties and a black rope around her ankles, according to records. Robert's estranged wife then says she was allegedly drugged, forced to inhale a crushed prescription pill, and to smoke pot. Hours later, the 3 then went upstairs to Robert's bedroom, where he allegedly did inappropriate, unwanted acts to her that night and the next day. Robert had allegedly threatened to take his family's lives, including his own, and said he would rather they be dead than to live apart. His children's mother said in court records that Robert said if the police arrived, he would end everyone's lives before the police even had a chance to enter. He even made her tell her brother that everything was fine when they spoke on the phone on Saturday. The following day, on Sunday, November 14th, the mother and estranged wife contacted police at 3:50 p.m. after she was able to convince Robert to let her leave to go home and get some clothes and her computer. She instead drove to Target and told an employee there about her ordeal. She reported to police that she had been violently attacked for over 24 hours. She said she believed that Robert had tracking devices on her car and on her phone. Police drove her to the police precinct to start the investigation so her car and phone couldn't be tracked. Their mother filed an emergency protective order for her and her girls, who were still in Robert's care at the time. Police served a search warrant at Robert's home the next day on Monday afternoon. They discovered the house in disarray. The windows were shattered, and officers found no sign of Robert or the girls. Officers then went to Tia's house about 4 miles away. after tracking Robert's phone to her place. Police described Tia to be less forthcoming with information and said she was armed as she answered the door. She told police she left when Robert and his estranged wife went into his bedroom, according to charging documents. Robert had fled with the girls in a stolen 2015 black Acura TL that was associated with Tia. Officials launched a manhunt for Robert and the girls. On Tuesday, November 16th, Robert had carjacked a woman in New York after crashing the black Acura into a shallow creek, police said. Robert took the woman's phone and left with the girls in her silver Volkswagen Jetta after he and his daughters had spent the night in a camper on her property. The woman said he asked her for a blanket and she brought them one. The woman said she asked the girls if their daddy was going to hurt her, and she said they responded, "No, our daddy is nice." She then called the police from her son's phone after they left. Robert ditched the Volkswagen and then used the woman's phone to call Tia, according to charging documents. Officers served a search warrant at Tia's home, but she and her car were missing. On Wednesday, during the manhunt, officials connected Robert and Tia to an armed robbery in the Cockeysville area in Maryland. Officials said Robert armed, kidnapped and carjacked a man with his two daughters and Tia there. By this time, Robert, 41, was wanted in Pennsylvania on a felony warrant for carjacking, and Tia, 36, was wanted on a charge of false imprisonment and was on suspension from Baltimore County Police Department. On Thursday morning, November 18th, officials pleaded with Robert and Tia to do the right thing and let the girls go safely. They urged the two adults to drop off the children at a safe location. On Thursday afternoon, police began to close in on the suspects during a brief chase into western Maryland. Robert, his two daughters, and his alleged accomplice, Tia, crashed into a roadside ditch right outside the small town of Ringgold, Maryland, while officials were in pursuit of them, reports say. When officials approached the car, all four people inside the car had been shot. Authorities said three of them had died on the scene, and one, Robert's youngest daughter, was flown to a hospital in Hagerstown, Maryland, where she died. State troopers found Tia's body in the driver's seat and Robert's body with his daughters in the back seat. In a news release, officials say the deaths were the result of Robert possibly taking his own life, and then his children's, and then Tia's lives. Officials determined more than likely Robert was armed and had numerous weapons in the car. It was a detestable ending to a manhunt that stretched 2 states and included federal agencies. The family members and loved ones of the two little girls, Gianna, 7, and Amina, 6, held candlelight vigils in remembrance of them. According to reports, Robert's mother and family members in Baltimore had received threats on their lives from Robert's in-laws. They allegedly requested protection from Baltimore authorities and said they did not receive it. However, the in-law that allegedly made the threat said that it was said out of anger and they had no intention on acting on it, officials said. The girl's mother and Robert's estranged wife had filed a citizen's complaint against a York Area Regional Police Chief. She wrote in the complaint that a judge granted her emergency protection order on that Sunday evening, November 14th. She then went on to say that at approximately 3 a.m. on Monday, November 15th, she was informed by officers that the chief had put a stop to the order. She said she was given no explanation for the stop, and she was still unaware of the reason for stopping the order. She went on that in the meantime, my daughters continue to be in the custody of their father, who is a danger to them, her, and himself. Officials are investigating the complaint. Rest in peace to Gianna and Amina. My sincerest condolences to their families and the family of those who lost their lives. Our prayers are with you. This was a difficult story to get through without feeling like somehow officials procrastinated on their efforts to get a head start on the situation before it escalated to what it did. If their lack of urgency had a part to play in this dreadful outcome, someone should have to answer for that. This man was clearly unstable. If his estranged wife had to escape after he basically held her against her will and harmed her, what did they think would happen next? She told them that he had already threatened to take all of their lives if he didn't get his way, allegedly. And the woman officer who was his alleged accomplice, I wonder if she was a willing accomplice or was she also afraid for her life and just complied with him? I don't know. It's hard to understand why or how something wasn't done sooner to save those babies. It's just sad. All right, fam, tell me what you think in the comments section below. Be sure to like this video if you're rocking with the content. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. Thank you for watching until the end. This is your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 times, and I'm out.